Good. Hi, everyone. Thank you for not being confused and choosing this right track too. We will not be disappointing. I'm Lauren Jensen from Bridger, Executive Growth Advisor, and I'm with a man who needs no introduction to you because he's already whet our appetite this morning with his early keynote, and we're going to dive a little bit deeper. I can't wait to hear. I'm sure some of you have some questions and follow-ups as well. I too have a few questions, and in a bit of a Bridger tradition, I'm going to ask you to kick us off with a little bit of like, who is Carlo beyond the head of e-commerce at Lenovo? The question is really, what did you want to be as a kid? And then I'm going to ask you to explain then what your current role is and what you're passionate about at Lenovo. From my perspective, I wanted to be Katie Couric on the Today Show. So you are actually allowing for my childhood profession to come to life. Thank you, Carlo.
Hopefully all softball questions.
All right. We'll see.
Funny story was when I was a little kid, the first thing I wanted to be when I grew up was a dinosaur. And typically like a stegosaurus, not the tyrannosaurus, not the big ones, but the stegosaurus, because I like that ball, the spiky ball in the end. But when I got smarter and realized that you can't change species, I wanted to be a veterinarian. So I really wanted to be in service to animals. And funny story is I went to school at the University of Texas many years ago and got a degree in zoology. So it's a pretty far step from sort of a zoology degree to sort of working in e-commerce right now, but it's been a really, really gratifying journey so far.
I think there's going to be some follow-up questions during the networking around how that actually happened. So then tell us a little bit about the role you do have at Lenovo and what makes you the most passionate about your job right now.
Sure. So I am really fortunate to be able to work at a place that sells technology, and we sell online. So our e-commerce business, as I said, is a really important direct route to market. I manage a lot of things. I manage North America, which includes Canada and the U.S. I manage Latin America, which includes 5 countries and LAS as well as Brazil. And I recently took over the EMEA portion of our business. So there's 13 countries in EMEA that we do business in that I now manage. So it's out of the 34 markets, I think it represents something like, I don't even know, 80% of the portfolio. So it's a big responsibility, and there's lots of people who sort of assist and are driving the right behaviors and the right conversations with customers every day.
I love that. So at Bridger, we care a lot about putting the humanity back into this design work. And so just to kind of amplify that comment, he could be at a very exclusive dinner this evening, but instead he's spending his time going to meet the rest of his team that he hasn't had the opportunity to meet. So I think that says a lot about you as a leader, Carlo.
Thank you.
So.
Thank you.
All right. So let's get into the B2B track and make this worth everyone's while. Can you share a little bit about how Lenovo has adapted its customer experience strategy to align with the changing behaviors with buyers, market dynamics, and just in this B2B space? How are you all handling that?
Sure. By the way, let me also say thank you guys for being in here, because I know it was a choice between this and an AI session, and so being here means a lot to me. Thank you. So we at Lenovo, as I said, take CX very seriously, to the extent to which we have an entire CX organization that is managing the entirety of these customer conversations and customer sentiment across all of our omni-channel businesses. So it's really, so we look at it, it's not only the responsibility of a CX focal, but individuals within the geographies, individuals within the business units, et cetera. Everybody has some responsibility, and everybody has an accountability to driving CX within their business. The way that we keep up with it is asking a lot of questions. At Lenovo, one of our sort of slogans or one of our sort of mottos is why. Is we ask why a lot. Why are things happening? Why are customers not happy? Why are customers happy? So this concept of why allows us a lot of latitude and allows us to be able to go drive conversations very deeply and start to go look at reams and reams of data and all sorts of telemetry to extract the reasons why. Because as I said before, it's not just enough to look at the data. It's really important to go look at the reasons behind the data. So that question of why leads us into a lot of places. So we focus internally a lot. But we also focus externally. We spend way too much of our time, honestly, thinking about our competition, thinking about how the market is changing, thinking about how customer behaviors are changing, and then trying to go adapt our strategies and our execution to meet those new expectations. And so a great example that hopefully I'll get to be able to talk about is this notion of digital transformation, this notion of digital first, and how do you accommodate people who are very used to self-service and transacting on their own. So these are the things we're constantly listening for and looking at market conditions to be able to go determine what's the next best thing to go invest in.
And not to ad lib too much, because I know we want to make sure we cover all the material, but are there particular cross-functional, partners that you have to influence that are easier to, I don't know, get on board with the whys, and some that are harder, or how do you really align on that, or is it sort of everyone's on one mission together?
I think everybody is on a mission, and the mission is to drive value for shareholders. That's what we do as a public business. I think everybody also sort of academically, philosophically has an agreement that we need to go drive CX. One of the complications that we have in an organization as large as ours is how do you prioritize all of the different things? How do you prioritize all the different ideas that you have or solutions that you have to customer problems, as well as sort of earmarking those or bouncing those up against revenue generating ideas. So to a large degree, it's about, there's sort of two major influence points. One is influencing our sort of broader CX organization that what the feedback that we're getting is meaningful and is material to the bottom line so that they can help prioritize it. And the second one is working with our IT organization to be able to go say, how do we prioritize CX initiatives within this sort of backlog of massive transformational ideas to make sure that we're meeting customer needs now in the right way, as well as thinking about how do we sort of develop for the future.
Yeah, there tends to be a natural friction there, I think, because you always have a legacy agenda that you have to overcome, and then also what are the priorities and how do you make that work? I know we're going to talk more about prioritization. So I know as we were kind of preparing for this, one of the important things that was a pivotal point was the extraction of value from a customer perspective, and maybe some examples. And we always viewed this when I was at Prudential as sort of like offer making versus offer taking, and we really wanted everyone to move to that ability to deliver value. So, would you mind sharing your perspective on that?
Sure. So we at Lenovo, within my business, we focus on three key customer segments. Customer segment number one is gamers. We care very much about gamers. I am a gamer myself, so I care very deeply about the gaming community. Number two is students. I don't really understand students any longer. I try to go pay attention to the TikToks.
Have you tried to do math lately? No, it's like a different
impossible.
thing, yeah.
Students, particularly sort of late high school, early college, and college continuing education, so those students. And then the third segment that we pay attention to is small businesses. And in North America, the small business market for PCs is about 20 million units a year. And we can see sort of within each tranche of the SMB audience, all the way from very small businesses like 1 to 9 to 10 to 99 employees, all the way up to 1,000 employees. We know sort of how big the market is. So we spend a lot of time kind of looking at SMBs. And I'm going to focus on SMBs just for a moment. We believe SMBs is, and sort of catering to and marketing to and driving growth within the SMB market is a fundamental part of our business at Lenovo. And so what we've done is we looked at that market and we said, how are customers buying, number one? They buy digitally, they buy online, they buy through channel partners, and they buy through retail. And then we said, when we look at the market, who's doing it well? Who's winning in the market? Who's winning in the sort of groups of the segment that we care about? And then how do we look at what they're doing, understand what's working well, and then start to go look at what isn't working well, the value that we can provide. So it led us to a conclusion that said we need to go invest in a exclusive place for small businesses that we call Lenovo Pro. It's a place that's dedicated for small businesses to come in and buy technology and solutions. And so we give them great products and we give them great prices. But more than that, we said, what else is important to small business? Well, what's interesting is small businesses care very much about turnaround time. So they want things that get to them fast. So we invested in expedited shipping for free for that tranche of customers. They care about support. They don't want any downtime. They want to make sure that when they have a problem, that problem gets fixed quickly, and there's very little downtime for their employees. So we invested in giving away free services, premier services. We also said they want to be able to sort of buy again and again. And so when you think about our PC business, traditional life cycle is 3 to 4 years. Somebody buys a product and they buy it 3 or 4 years later. With small businesses, it's a little bit different because as they bring on new employees, they have to invest in technology and laptops, et cetera, to be able to outfit these new members. So they want to be buying over and over again. So how do we provide a mechanism through loyalty and rewards to be able to go give them something back to say, when you purchase from us, we're going to give you an opportunity to be able to go discount your next purchase. So these are things that we looked at and we said, these these are critical parts of what SMBs are looking for, and we actually developed them as part of a value proposition for Lenovo Pro. And it's been one of the biggest successes that we've seen at Lenovo. It's got one of the highest growth rates we've seen in the entire company over the past 5 years. So it's extraordinarily gratifying to see that it's working.
No, that's exciting because I was going to ask how, like, what metrics and measurement, obviously related to growth, like the bottom line impact, because I think you tend sometimes with these initiatives to look at the leading indicators and you didn't take the right baseline. So it sounds like you had a real opportunity there to be able to showcase that as a big differentiator in the segmentation.
Absolutely.
Space. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I know we touched on this a little bit in your talk earlier, so around the real-time customer feedback and how does that feed into driving growth from a B2B perspective, but how do you embed that feedback loop? Do you have examples that you can share with the folks here that they might be able to leverage back in their workplaces?
Absolutely. Yeah. So there's no better place in the world to get real-time feedback than having, 1 billion customers coming to your website and willing to go tell you all of the bad experiences they have. So we sift through a lot of that sort of verbatim data. But 2 examples come to mind, and I'm not proud of them, but I will share them with you, and as long as it's a sort of vow of secrecy, cone of silence in here.
Cone of silence.
Don't tell my boss. But there were 2 examples where we got it dead wrong. We screwed up. And so the first example was we started to recognize that while we have a very small cancellation rate and a very small return rate on our website, what we were seeing was customers were telling us overwhelmingly recently that they were very dissatisfied. And the data itself was interesting, but we couldn't get to the reasons why. And then we started to realize that we have a problem with returns. And here was our problem. A customer buys a $2,000 laptop. They don't like it. We give them 30 days to return it, no questions asked. We even pay for return shipping. The problem was when those products came back, it was taking us 35 to 50 days to give them a refund. So can you imagine you buy a $2,000 laptop or a $3,000 laptop, and all of a sudden we're holding your money for 35 to 50 days? It was just a matter of the fact that we had scaled so fast that the processes that we had in place were not doing the job. So we put together a tiger team, kind of in what we call a bold workout, and we documented every single step in that process. And what we realized was the bureaucracy that was in there and the lack of sort of coordinated tools was creating these friction points with our customers. And we had spent so much money getting them to our website and so much money converting them to be able to have them dissatisfied at the very last part of the step and risk the fact that they would not return was not worth it to us. So we invested an awful lot of money and time in shrinking that, building the tools, investing in the IT capabilities, and delegating responsibility to the employees themselves, that we got that down to 3 to 5 days. Now, it's not perfect. It's a good step. We got a lot of work to do, but it's a good example of when we saw feedback in real time with a problem that had been created, we got people on it really quickly to be able to go solve it.
I think that says a lot about culture too, when you're willing, so first of all, thank you for sharing with everyone something that legitimately didn't work, that everyone can relate to, speed to market, turnaround time. I mean, these are all fulfillment. These are all very common challenges. So I think that's amazing. And then also the culture, like if you could just maybe add to that experience of, was everyone agreeing and willing to say, like, Houston, we have a problem?
Yes.
Yeah, so that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, it was almost a gravitational pull, right? I think that if I step back for a moment, Lenovo is a company that's been around for 30 years, actually 45 years now, or 40 years, excuse me. And in that time, it's been very channel-centric. We delegate a lot of our sales responsibility to our partners, and that's been a great way of doing it. We, as a direct company, have been sort of growing over time, but it's almost existentially different than anything they've done in the past. So when we were sort of saying, Houston, we have a problem, and we were telling it to sort of broader executives, I think the realization was, even though it was a small part of the business, relatively speaking, that the impact on our customer experience and impact on NPS scores could be massive. So getting not only the working teams together to figure it out, but then providing a list of here are the actions that we need, and not a single executive on that call who had decision-making authority said, no, don't do that, or that's too expensive, was really gratifying. And it was, to me, a bit of our coming out party. That was a chance when we were legitimate.
Yeah, I love a good, like, secret shopper story. I had some responsibility for the customer experience that we had at Prudential as well, and I had family members who were customers. So that was, refreshing, because there was certainly no holds barred in that scenario, but I really do think that experiencing it yourself, playing those calls, embedding your senior executives in those experiences so they can feel the pain that a customer would feel. And in the environment, $2,000, $3,000 is a long time to be out of that if you're trying to give your child a laptop to go to school or whatever the case may be. The timing of that really matters a lot. So
Yes.
thank you for sharing that. Did you have any other examples you wanted to offer around the feedback loop piece before
Well, so there's another example, and it was really real time. So when we think about sort of effectiveness of our business, a lot of people think conversion is sort of the key metric for an e-commerce sales platform. I like to look at things in terms of revenue per visit. That is, how much revenue are we extracting for every visit that we come in? And when we look at the funnel, I'm sorry for the lead up here.
Your CFO is glad you think of it that way too, I bet.
He wants the profitability, less about the revenue. But sorry to go into it. But when I think about this, we think about things as we call a full funnel. And so there's sort of the entry and the browse all the way down through to the sort of transaction and when you hit order confirmation. And as you look through the funnel, you start to go realize that conversion productivity and revenue productivity, revenue per visit productivity, actually gets significantly better the farther down in the funnel you go. So without getting into sort of absolute numbers, I'll just share with you that a person that makes it to the end of the checkout step, right before they hit order confirmation, is worth 20 times more than a customer at the very beginning of the funnel. So it's extraordinarily important for us to go measure feedback at the very bottom of the funnel in our cart and checkout all of the time, so that we don't see any fallout. So we were getting real-time information that through a third party that we have on the site, that people were what they were calling rage clicking. They were clicking on things, expecting something to happen, and actually not getting that thing to happen. And eventually we started to go realize that this was causing people to not check out, which is a big problem. So this is where in real time we got our UX teams and we got our IT teams together and said, fix this, consolidate it, remove these elements, or make them more obvious as to what the outcome is supposed to be. And we did see very quickly that was not an issue anymore, but always replaced with another issue. But that's the point of trying to go understand sort of how does CX and commerce sort of merge, and how do you fix them in real time?
And I think hashtag rage clicking needs to go viral because that's a thing, right?
It is a thing. It very much is a thing.
So just keeping us sort of on topic around the B2B realities of profitability, growth, and sustainability. What specific perspectives do you have to offer in regards to that would be takeaways for this session too?
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I missed it earlier, but I suspect I know there was a conversation about sort of how do you turn CX into an ROI?
Yeah, this is a measurement question. You're right.
And I missed that, and I wish I had been there. But one of the things, this is something we have always struggled with, is how do you sort of understand the quantitative commerce value of CX? And so we've taken a little bit of an interesting approach, and it kind of leads to it, which is we look at as I said, revenue per visit is a pretty important metric, and there's respend and customer lifetime value and all that. But when we look at sort of at the point where customers are making decisions, revenue per visit is to us sort of the measure of success. And we started to go look at revenue per visit for satisfied customers and the revenue per visit for dissatisfied customers. And it should come as no surprise that revenue per visit for satisfied customers was significantly higher than those who were dissatisfied. So one of the things that we were able to sort of get people's hearts and minds bought into was, if you convert a dissatisfied customer into a satisfied customer, then there should be a natural sort of pull of revenue per visit and overall site productivity. So this is one of the ways that we've been able to also get some of our IT initiatives funded and prioritized, is that we were able to go connect the revenue per visit and the lifetime value of CX to the initiatives that we have, because then it's not diametrically opposed to sort of the bigger charter of how do you make sure that you retain customers but also generate top line and generate revenue. So those are a couple ways that we've looked at it, and I'm always hungry to learn about new ways to do it.
I think we should probably have I'm sure there's a lot of questions on this topic. I've often said that I think on the qualitative end of that, not so much the quantitative end, but the qualitative end, sometimes it's not so much in the challenge that you experience, but it's how a company recovers from it that drives a lot of loyalty. And so I think that's just such a really smart way to think about that, driving that going forward.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I want to make sure we get time for questions, because I think people are going to want to double click on that. Anything else on the measurement front that you wanted to offer?
Well, I spoke a little bit about loyalty earlier, and I can't sort of emphasize enough how just game-changing this has been for us, not only in the conversations that we can have with customers all the time at every touch point, but also in the fact that, again, quantitatively, we can see that loyal customers are much happier, have a higher lifetime value, have a higher CX score, better NPS, better OSAT, et cetera, than non-loyal customers. And we can actually see, sort of mathematically, that those customers are 300% more profitable over the long term, and 600% that's more profit, and 600% drives 600% more revenue than people who are not loyal. So not only do we get the benefits of all the commerce value, we get the benefits of higher NPS, higher CSAT, higher OSAT, higher web exit surveys. So we know that if we can get more people to be loyal, it's an investment that we have to go make. But if we can bring them onto the loyalty program, it not only makes them happier at the point of sale, but it keeps them in our pipeline for much longer.
So that's sort of bringing me back to, we have a couple things, but I want to make sure we have time for questions. The prioritization question. Like, I know that's such a big one, and I'm wondering, I would say from a financial services perspective, we got this really wrong in terms of how we spent dollars, particularly in the IT space, very product focused, very top of the funnel.
Yep.
I'm just curious, how does some of what you just offered play into the actual day-to-day prioritization of how things, money gets allocated and determined, and any hacks for those of us desperate to learn them?
Well, I think one is being inside of an organization that values this kind of thing. My boss, who is very much a visionary, and I learn from him every single day, literally sends out an email to every single customer that buys online that says, here's my name, here's my phone number, here's my email address, tell me what you thought about this experience. That's how important it is for him.
Yeah.
See, understanding verbatims, understanding customer sentiment, even at a very individual level, is very important to him, and I'm on the receiving end of every one of those complaints that comes through. But it helps to, one, have an organization that cares very deeply about it. The second thing that we found is, and I know it may not be, sort of possible for everybody, we have our own budget for IT work in my business, and we allocate a portion of that specifically, exclusively for CX initiatives.
Oh.
So there's always going to be this sort of conundrum of what do you prioritize. For us, there's an allocation of the budget that goes directly to CX stuff and is completely held out. And then to the extent to which we have sort of spillover, et cetera, then we get to have conversations about CX and revenue generating activities, but it's on a level playing field where we can talk about this revenue generating idea here is worth X, and this CX idea is not only better for customers, but it generates X plus one, et cetera. Yeah. So it creates the sort of consistent conversation and allows us to be able to go prioritize things without giving up any sense of the bigger picture.
That's amazing, because it's Game of Thrones up in the financial services arena.
Is it really?
Yeah, that's been my experience. So that's really great to feel that level of the maturity curve where you have a separate allocated budget. I think is probably a bit of a
and again, an executive that deeply cares about customer experience.
Well, yeah, when you're personalizing it to that level of interaction, I do think bringing it to life in that way is really critical for, the friction makes the funding change. So.
And when the executives themselves feel the friction, I can tell you that things get changed pretty quickly.
Yeah,
yes.
Absolutely. So I'm conscious that if we are being really prudent CX professionals, then we care deeply about what our users think and what they want to hear from the stage. So I'd love to open it up to questions and comments or feedback or anything that's really top of mind based on this session, or if there's something that's a hangover from Carlo's keynote earlier. We do have a mic runner. Yeah, right behind you. There you go. Thanks.
I have a question. How do you keep your employees aware, engaged, excited about all the customer experience efforts that you're making?
Well, number one, it helps to employ very young people who are very sort of socially conscious. I'm only joking. No, we do have a very young sort of organization. I think a couple things. One is, I spoke about it before, data is only as good as your willingness and opportunity to go share it to people who are empowered to be able to go do something about it. And so I talked about this notion of democratizing CX data. Too often we ask for feedback and then we do nothing with it. Every single employee at Lenovo has a CX dashboard. They can see in real time how their business is doing. Not only that, because I also realize that everybody has, 60 hours a week that they try to put into a 40-hour work week. So it's not always enough to be able to be reactive. Sometimes you have to be proactive. So we spend at least 1 hour a week talking about CX initiatives. We have CX focals that actually sit in my organization. There's 2 of them. In North America, there's 1 in EMEA, and there are 2 in South America, who are specifically and sort of very deliberately focusing on CX at scale. So they come in and they talk about issues that they're having. They're talking about IT roadmap. They're talking about fixes that they have in place. So, and they're sharing that with the broader organization so that it feels like we're making a connection between what our customers are saying and what our customers are feeling and the actions that we're taking to be able to go solve them long term. And everybody's in those conversations, even the executives. Hopefully that helps.
Yeah. Yep, she's coming. I think psychologically connecting your employees to the fact that they're users of their products is a key
Yes.
one too.
We call that dog fooding.
Okay.
Yes.
I love that because it's so funny how quickly that gets lost.
Yes.
I know in our case, we were, benefactors of our own benefits offerings, and people weren't even embedding those experiences that they personally had as employees into the products. So.
Yes, exactly.
Sorry, thank
Amazing.
you.
Really great panel, thank you. I suppose CX is so broad, it would be really interesting to know almost a bit of a cheat sheet of what are the 1 or 2 initiatives from an ROI perspective that have maybe at Lenovo B2B had some of the biggest impact?
Man, these questions are always so good. I got to think about it for a minute. We've got, I've got an example. So I talked about in 2020 that we saw this just massive influx of new customers. And 2 things came to our attention very quickly. And these are all relevant to CX. The first thing was, holy mackerel, we got to change our content strategy because we're talking to people who've never heard of our brands before, then we're comfortable with it. So we had to be able to go adapt to change our content on the site to be less around tech specs, less around sort of the speeds and feeds that ITDMs would care about, and more geared towards having the right products put in front of these small businesses that were looking for products and technology very quickly. So that's one. That was where we started to go see this. It wasn't necessarily in traditional CX KPIs, OSAT, or NPS, et cetera. But what we did see was our web exit surveys. So we asked people for their feedback when they exit. And we were seeing that some of these newer customers that we could segment into these segment as people we'd never seen before. We're saying, hey, you've got to do a better job of actually, positioning your products and telling us why they're right for what I'm doing. So we really had to go make a fairly sizable investment and change in our content strategy to be less focused on technology and tech specs and more focused on outcomes and solutioning. The second thing was, consequently, we pay very much attention to sort of the mix of traffic that comes into our website. So desktop and mobile. Desktop is very productive for us, mobile not so much productive. So during the pandemic, we saw many more people on their desktop devices because they were sitting at home in front of a computer, and they were not on their mobile phones so much. That was fantastic for us. We had really good performance. But as that waned and people went back into, sort of retail environments, or they went on trips, et cetera, a lot more visitors were coming in on mobile, and we were starting to go attract digital natives, these sort of millennials and the newer folks that were very, very passionate, very understood digital a lot. So we realized very quickly that our mobile site was not anywhere near where it needed to be. So we went through and we asked a bunch of people questions. We went through usability studies, and ultimately decided that we wanted to completely overhaul our mobile site. And it took us about a year to go do that. But right now, it's much cleaner, much more customer-centric, much more frictionless, et cetera. So again, it was one of those things where we saw customers coming in, we saw that they were dissatisfied either in sort of traditional productivity metrics or in CX, and said, these are new folks that we need to pay attention to, and we need to sort of adapt our business to accommodate it. So those are the sort of 2 things that come to mind. Hopefully those were give you some good examples.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
All right, we have time for one last question. You good? Well, okay. We went over here then. Thanks. She's so close. Yeah, I know. Well, we could hear you, but yeah.
Scream.
Just for the room. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You talked a little bit about SMBs and sort of larger. I'm curious too about larger accounts and how do you go about sort of building long-term, increasing that customer life value? I'm assuming like, hey, you bought some computers, maybe you want some, monitors too, or like, do you have programs in place that sort of actively go after building out those portfolios with the larger client segments?
Absolutely. And so let me just do three.
You planted that question.
I did not plant
That's
that.
the mic
Thank
drop
you.
one
Your
at the
check,
end.
your check is in the mail.
All right.
No, so three things. One is we ask these accounts, these very large accounts, global accounts, large public sector accounts, what products and what features are important to them. So they actually go into the product roadmap. We also, through our sort of CRM engine, we have sort of embedded in large language models, machine learning, and some AI to be able to go understand both propensity analysis, i.e. from an account standpoint, when is somebody ready to buy, or when are they ready for the sort of next set of solutions conversations, but also they give us sentiment at scale so that we can now understand this customer or this account here is starting to buy less and their NPS is starting to go down. They're at risk of falling out of your book entirely, and you're at risk of losing this account. And so that creates actionable analytics so that those account executives can go out and try to salvage that relationship, understand what the problems are, and go remedy them and build remediation plans around it. So it's really, to me, it's holistic of going into the products, understanding sort of what products are important to these accounts. Two is doing propensity modeling to understand what's the next best offer, what's next as part of their sort of maturity curve or customer life cycle. And number three is the sentiment that goes into the accounts to make sure that if somebody's at risk of falling out, that we have a SWAT team, smoke jumper team, whatever it is, go in and figure out what we can do to go salvage a relationship.
That's awesome. And you built that propensity modeling in-house then? Or
Yes.
do you use a tool?
Yes.
You can go and sell that maybe, yeah.
We can productize that, maybe so.
Next
Awesome,
AWS.
thank you.
All
All
right.
right.
Thank you.
Thank
Lauren.
Such a pleasure.
Very good. Thank
All
you,
right,
guys.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.